Welcome everybody. Special welcome to Mr. Mavridas, member of the European Parliament Committee for Economic and Monetary Affairs, among other things. Mr. Bart Stas, member of Parliament and member of the Budgetary Control Committee. Mr. Karl Dolan from the European Office, International Liaison Office of Transparency International. And we are here, three of the 7 initiators of this European Citizens Initiative, Stop Fraud with EU Funds via Better Controls, which we started in the autumn. Mr. Zoltán Keresztény is the main representative.
First, I would like to say that the two other members of Parliament, European Parliament, plan to participate here, Mr. Monsieur Alain Lamassoure and Monsieur Jean Arthuis, both from the Budgetary Committee. Budget Committee. 7 private individuals from 7 different EU countries have launched this ECI. Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Hungary, Luxembourg and Sweden. And why? We strongly believe that the European Union, if the European Union could overcome these difficulties today, the EU could be the leading economic political power of the world, one of the leading economic political power of the world, efficient, stronger and a proactive European Union. And we see at the moment, at the same time, that there are so many populist, hate-monger and also corrupt politicians, European politicians, who are attacking the core values of the European Union and also using EU funds to weaken checks and balances, to weaken media freedom and also civil society in some countries of the European Union. These funds given to a country because of to develop its deprived regions, deprived areas. And inside of that, these illiberal states using these funds and the government's oligarchs to build its own media, propagandistic media, and to build its own economic life to maintain power, to maintain these illiberal states. And that's why we have launched the Stop Fraud with EU Funds ECI. We want ex-ante preliminary controls in risky areas. These ex-ante preliminary controls should cover complete exploration of all circumstances. All of these circumstances should be published. And finally, we believe that it leads us to a more competitive and a stronger Europe by using budgetary resources better. I strongly convinced that we must avoid that the EU penalize of all nations, by taking away the EU funds, because we think that, and that's why we propose ex-ante preliminary controls. Because of that, by taking away the whole EU funds from a country, the illiberal politicians can turn against the EU, a whole country. That is why we count on the support of all of the mainstream EP groups. So thank you again, Mr. Mavridas and also Mr. Stas to be here. And also we would like to ask especially the anti-fraud NGOs of Europe. So thank you, Mr. Cardan, also to be here, to have this initiative and to support this initiative. Don't let illiberal populists and corrupt politicians can use EU funds to maintain their power and to maintain their control in any given EU country.
Okay, I will try to give a very short statement explaining why I'm hosting and supporting this initiative and this event today. First, I need to say that this is not just about money. It's more than money, and I will explain why. Come from different political groups in different regions of the European Union, different member states, we might have a lot of differences, but at the same time, what keeps us united in the European Union, it's the rule of law, the fundamental principles and values of the EU. The reason why I view this initiative as more than just money, it's the fact that European citizens' money are being misused by specific governments against the fundamental principles and values of the EU. And to my understanding, I'm not an expert on fraud, but I need to support what considers to be the greatest interest of EU, the rule of law. That's why I think that there are issues, legal issues, political as well as ethical issues, why we support this initiative. That's why I keep mentioning and emphasizing on the fact that it's not just about money, it's more than that. For example, I will try to explain this by using a concept from economics, a moral hazard concept in political terms. If we allow some governments to misuse European citizens' money, then it would be a matter of time when some other government would do the same thing. That's why we need to act, as has already been stated, proactively, and not to allow this to spread around in other member states. And the final statement is the fact that usually in the European Union we have we have a division between South and North. Well, I'm here coming from one of the member states way at the south of the European Union to join in this initiative, because what unites us together, it's much more important than what might divide us.
I'm here as a Belgian MEP, active since 1999 in the Budgetary Control Committee. So I'm not an expert in fraud, but I'm an expert in combating fraud, which is much more important. When I was informed about the Citizens Initiative, I immediately went to the website, I signed it. So that is at least already one signature in Belgium. No, I support it because it is fully in line in what we do since decades in the European Parliament and in the Budgetary Control Committee. If I go to the most recent things, we got a report, a special report by the Court of Auditors on fraud and the measures that have to be taken, the failures also of the European Union. So already that special report gives an incentive to support your Citizens Initiative. Secondly, with the Budgetary Control Committee in this term, we dedicated quite a lot of our energy towards what is happening in many illiberal states in mostly the eastern part of Europe. We know there are problems in Romania, we know there are problems also in Poland. I myself am quite active in the whole issue on how to make sure that there are no conflicts of interests between those political leaders whose countries get financial support from the European Union and their own businesses. One of the cases is of course Mr. Orban in Hungary, but we have the specific case, a very specific case of the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, Mr. Babiš, who is also a businessman, owner of Agrofert. We are in close contact with OLAF, the anti-fraud agency of the European Union. Many cases are running, some of them are concluded. But I think it is, as my colleague from Cyprus, Kostas Mavridis, told all of you, the rule of law is a quite important approach. That's also why we had and discussed between the Budgetary Control Committee and the Budget Control and the Budget Committee how we can indeed intervene when that kind of issues happen. So my message is this Citizens Initiative 3 months or 4 months before the European elections of the 26th, 23rd, 26th of May is a very important initiative because it brings into the debate the whole issue of frauds, on how to stop oligarchs, how to combat corrupt regimes, and how to combat illiberalism in those countries, and to assure that European money, which is taxpayers' money, it is money coming from all of us and from companies, at least those who pay taxes, because that's another issue, tax evasion and tax fraud. But it is European money is our money, and that is for me the most essential thing. Each time there is a scandal, such a scandal gives oxygen, gives fuel to Euroscepticism. I'm a pro-European MEP. I'm critical to Europe. I don't say that in the European Union everything goes well. I remain very critical, but I'm pro-European because I think cooperation, solidarity is the only way to convince people that that the European project is a good one. So all my support, and I hope you will succeed in getting 1 million signatures, so that we have a new tool to put pressure on the new European Commission, because I presume that will be a task for the new European Commission, so that also when we have to vote on the new anti-fraud commissioner and the budget commissioner and the agricultural commissioner and all the other commissioners, that we can use your citizens' initiative to put pressure and to make sure that this issue is one of the core things of the next Commission, and surely also of the next Parliament, where I hope to be a member again. Thank you.
Actually, we talked about risky areas, and it was Transparency International Hungary who published a very nice study about red flags, which could be even used as an indicator. So, welcome, Mr. Dolan from Transparency International.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laszlo. And as you mentioned in your introduction, I'm the director of the Transparency International EU office, but we're essentially the mouthpiece in Brussels for our 24 national chapters and partners all around the European Union. And we are, as a network, as a movement, very, very supportive of this initiative, not only in Hungary, but in the other member states as well. And our national chapters will be busily promoting this citizens' initiative in those countries as well. We're supportive for two reasons. One, that's part of our DNA. We're an anti-corruption and anti-fraud organization, so who could disagree with a citizens' initiative like Stop Fraud? But secondly, we were also very supportive of the European Public Prosecutor's Office. When I was digging around in the archives for this press conference, I found a policy paper dating from 2003 where we said there should be something like the European Public Prosecutors. And now, 15 years later, we're almost there. But still, we're disappointed to see that a number of countries have opted out of that voluntary procedure, including Hungary and Poland, Sweden, my own country, Ireland, which I'm very disappointed to see. And so I think that just shows that maybe some people accuse NGOs of being a bit short-termist, but we're in this for the long run. We're a very practical organization in our approach to stopping corruption and fraud. So I want to speak just very briefly about two practical things that could be done if we get this citizens' initiative through. The first is about a concept called the Integrity Pact. And the concept is pretty simple. You get the contracting authority, the public authorities, and the bidders to sign up to enhanced transparency measures. Yeah? So they sign a contract together saying, we're going to be cleaner than clean. We're going to be squeaky clean about this project. And we're going to subject ourselves, importantly, to independent monitoring from civil society organizations. So we have 17 of these projects in 11 member states, where you have big projects funded by EU money, where Transparency International chapters can review all the material, all the documents related to that particular project. The second example actually comes from, and I'm very glad Mr. Stas brought it up, the recent case of Mr. Babish's conflicts of interest. In fact, it was our national chapter in the Czech Republic that launched a formal complaint to the European Commission on that conflict of interest. This has happened because of the diligence, the activism of one civil society organization. But what I would say would be another good ex ante control is that politicians in countries, or public officials in countries that haven't signed up to the European Public Prosecutor should be required to submit their financial declarations to a body like OLAF, and then it would be up to OLAF to look and check to see if those financial declarations represent any conflict of interest in terms of receiving EU funds. And then OLAF would also be empowered to check and verify those information against information that is in company ownership or share ownership databases around Europe.
Is financial information about themselves, about their...
So certainly in the Czech Republic and in most countries around Europe, high-ranking public officials and politicians are required to fill out declarations of financial interest. For example, European parliamentarians, for example.
Yeah, that is the case in Hungary also.
And they have to publish this. So so what I'm suggesting is this would have to be submitted in cases where they're not made public, and in many cases for, say, officials, it's not public. This would have to be submitted to OLAF for verification. Maybe two final comments. I very much hope this Citizens Initiative succeeds, and that the Commission will take action on the basis of this initiative. But I don't think we need to wait. I think a lot of what we are discussing now can be done tomorrow, right? We're in the middle of discussing the next EU budget. We are in the middle of discussing what the rules are that will govern that budget. So the common provisions regulation will need to be discussed and agreed in the next months. And these kind of controls, these kind of measures, we believe, Transparency International believes, could be placed within the common provisions regulation. And a final comment, which was that you mentioned that this initiative stands in contradistinction to other initiatives which are about placing rule of law conditionality on EU funds, and it would be better to do it this way because that way the final beneficiaries don't suffer. Ordinary citizens who would be the beneficiaries of this funding don't suffer if funds are suspended. The only thing I would say is I don't see it as an either or. I mean, we've written a paper about how the Commission or how the EU should place conditions, rule of law conditions on the disbursement of EU funds. And one of the things we say in that is that it shouldn't be either or. You either get the funds or you don't. There should be a graded response that's possible in response to the discovery of threats to the rule of law. And one of those things, one of those intermediate actions you could take, having done an assessment of the threat to the rule of law, is indeed to put these kind of ex-ante controls in place. So that's all from me.
I understand why Hungary is of special interest with regards to this initiative, but there are other member states, and I will give you a good example of that, which would be affected in a very positive way from this initiative. I will tell you the case of Cyprus. As you probably know, when the Republic of Cyprus joined the European Union in 2004, it joined the European Union with still unsolved the problem with the northern part of Cyprus being under Turkish military control. And I belong to those politicians who supported at the time very strongly that we should prioritize more political needs and support the Turkish Cypriot people residing on the northern part. But actually what came to our attention over the years is that the local administration has been called, it's been subordinated to Turkey, and much of this money, unfortunately, are being misused. And I'd like to make a last comment myself too. Regarding the draft MFF by the European Commission, it includes a new tool based on which those member states that do not comply with the European values, the rule of law, there will be supposedly no more new fund commitments towards those member states. This is a good intended proposal, suggestion, but view it from a more political view. I think that it might be better to try to find a civic society and those organizations within the member state that would allow the flow of the funds going instead of penalizing the member state. And I could say many reasons, but one of them is purely political. In those member states who distance themselves from the values and principles of the EU, most likely the majority of the media are being under the influence of the government. And in a way, what we've seen many times is that the government of the member state uses this, let's say, penalty as a political view that the EU acts in a very partial way against a member state. That's why I think that we should review again this proposal, although I emphasize once again that it's obvious that it is good intended, but at the same time we should view it in a more broad way.
A comment on this one, and it's on behalf of the Greens that I talk here. I think the only solution in the problem that if you penalize the end beneficiaries by taking measures, the only way to assure that the money still goes to the right beneficiaries is making or assuring that the Commission takes a direct management role of all subventions that are foreseen. 80% of all subventions are shared management, management by Commission and by the Member State. If you see that there is a Member State where there is a problem in the authorities and the politicians, then I think we should create a possibility that the Commission can take over the shared management and can do the management directly, so that the money that is needed and that is well funded goes to the right beneficiaries.
I think what would be a more fine-grained approach is you say, okay, we'll do an assessment. There should be a public assessment, by the way, of threats to the rule of law. And on the basis of that assessment, there's a number of options.
Yeah.
We can either have stricter controls, like we just discussed. If that doesn't work, we put the distribution of the funds in the hands of maybe an independent NGO, like that's the Norway grants model, or maybe the Commission takes over direct management. And then only in the last resort do the funds stop flowing completely. And I think that would be a more intelligent way, actually, of using this pressure.